Hi, everybody. Welcome. We've got a few more people who are just coming through from the waiting room. I hope you've all had a wonderful day and you've managed to stay out of the rain. It has been bucketing down the last little while where I am. Thank you so much for joining us today for the first of our two Ask Me Anything sessions for Map Velocity for the second half of 2022. We really appreciate you all joining us this evening. My name is Sarah. I'm the Marcoms and Events Manager for the Melbourne Entrepreneurial Centre, which is the home of entrepreneurship at the University of Melbourne. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping things. If you could all please keep your microphones on mute, that would be fantastic. And we certainly welcome you to keep your cameras on. Please do be aware that this session is also being recorded. Also, I'm currently puppy sitting, so if you can hear any barking in the background, my apologies. If she's a good girl, she can come in and say hello at the end. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the country where I'm talking to you from today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. I pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders joining us here today. So today's Ask Me Anything session gives you an opportunity to hear all about Velocity, about how it works, understand what the program is like from a founder who has done it before, and ask as many questions as you like. Today, we're joined by the lovely Eva from Brave Feet. But to kick off, we'll hear a little bit about Velocity from Program Manager Rory McNeice. I'll have a bit of a chat to Eva and then we'll get stuck into question time, which is what you're all here for. Please do make sure that you write down any questions that you want to ask along the way so that we can make sure that you get the most out of the hour we've got together. So let's get cracking. I would love to give a warm welcome to Rory to give you the lowdown on Velocity.
Thank you, Sarah. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to see everyone. Let me pull up some slides and we can get underway. Look at that lovely, sparkly galaxy of exciting things happening. So yes, welcome to the Ask Me Anything session for the Velocity program for the second half of 2022. Hopefully we'll cover everything that you need to know. And if there's anything that you feel like we haven't covered, that's why we have questions at the end. Ooh, let me click on the right thing so that my slides will go when I want them to. Look at that, much better. As Sarah mentioned, I'll give you a quick overview of MAP and Velocity. We'll talk about application and preparations. We'll hear from Eva and then some time for Q&A at the end. Very straightforward, so we'll jump into it. All about MAP. MAP has now been around for 10 years. I think this year is technically our 11th cohort. The first one was in 2012. And in that time, we've supported over 160 startups coming through the accelerator who've raised comfortably over $100 million in funding, generated over $120 million in revenue, and 1,400 or so jobs have been created in the process. And in that 10-year time, we realized that we had a bit of a problem because we had all these fantastic companies applying for the accelerator at the stage where they were ready to grow and scale their business. But we actually didn't have a place for those who were really early on their journey to come in and learn about how to get started, how to do those fundamentals and those early pieces around building out their startup. So that's why we built Velocity. Velocity was built to support early stage high potential founders and help them get their business off the ground. We've had some very interesting outcomes through Velocity. We've had over 160 founders come through the process. We're representing over 100 startups, and about 60% of those are actually still in operation. And we're actually pretty proud of that statistic because it's something that's quite interesting and unique about the Melbourne Accelerator Program being part of the University of Melbourne, is that we don't actually take equity in any of the companies that come through our programs, which means that we're in the very enviable position of not having to just try and force people to grow as big and as fast as possible so that we can see a return on that equity. But instead, we get the opportunity to sit down and support founders in growing the business to where they want the business to go, and where they see it as being a successful business, whether that's a smaller business of a couple $1 million valuation that's enough to pay the bills and keep them happy and doing something that they love, or whether that's then trying to grow and scale something up to be $1 billion company. We have quite a few interesting outcomes and pathways from Velocity. So as I mentioned, it's a pre-accelerator program that was originally set up to try and build a pathway into our core accelerator so that we would have a high the capability to help and support people on that early stage of their journey, such that when they got ready to grow and scale, we knew them, we were able to help them and support them and help them grow. But participants from Velocity have gone on to many and varied exciting things in their own right, whether that's getting funding through organizations like Scalata, or going through other accelerators like RMITs or the MedTech Actuator. We're very happy that it's an open door to the ecosystem and a way for people who are trying to establish themselves in that startup ecosystem to really find their feet, find some of the connections that they need, and then find the pathway to continue in the ecosystem. Companies that have come through Velocity have raised, I think those numbers are a little bit out of date. It's over $9 million and generated $6 or $7 million worth of revenue and created 200 or so jobs, which is very exciting to be able to support. And we're actually very proud of some of our diversity statistics, where we've been able to get a lot of founders coming in from very diverse backgrounds. Now, we're happy that 52% have had female founders, about 48% have been impact focused, but we're also very happy that these have been across a huge range of industries and experiences. We've had people coming in from 15 years in supply chain logistics, and others coming straight out of an engineering undergraduate degree. And that breadth of experience in the founders coming into the Velocity program actually forms a very key part of our cohort structure and our cohort system. Because as much as I will get to stand up in front of participants and talk for hours and hours on end about the exciting things that we get to cover, one of the most valuable parts of the experience is actually being able to meet and learn from other founders who are going through similar experiences, but with their own twist and flavor to it. So there are all sorts of valuable lessons, for example, that people developing a software as a service company can learn from a founder who's working on a physical, real world hardware product. There are interesting overlaps and insights. And also, because we're getting founders coming in from such different and diverse stages in their careers, you never know who's already solved the problem that you might be facing. So a really valuable part of what we do is we put together a cohort and clusters within that cohort to help you build bonds and connections to some of the other founders coming through. As I mentioned, we get to talk about some really exciting things. Key to that is around problem solution fit and customer discovery, or the way that I usually express it is customer discovery, customer validation, and product market fit. What we mean by that is that we're looking at who cares about the problem that you're solving, what is that real problem and what is the heart of it, and how are you making sure that what you're doing really tackles that problem in a way that's meaningful for your customers? Because if you're not doing something that fits roughly those criteria, it's a lot harder to have a successful business. Making sure that you're solving something for people who have a real problem and really care about it is a shortcut to success. In terms of how the program is structured, as on the screen, there's a $500 cost to the program. I'll be fully transparent. That's mostly because we want you to commit your time and energy to it. And we've had some experiences in the past where if people found it was free, they'd sort of come along to a couple and be like, yeah, whatever, and drop off. But we actually we put that financial commitment there because we want you to be coming along to every session, because the last thing I want to see is founders dropping off where we could have had other enthusiastic founders coming in and participating. So a little bit of a barrier, but mostly to make sure that you're there and you're committed and getting the most out of it, because that regular attendance and that regular accountability is a really valuable part of what we do as well. We go through a set of structured workshops, and I'll have a slide in a second about some of the details there. And we have mentoring from entrepreneurs and experts within the MAP community who are founders themselves or very capable and experienced people in particular industries who can give advice and support on tackling particular challenges around things like intellectual property, marketing, building out your MVP, etc. So as a quick overview of the timing for this year's this cohorts program, it will be running from the 22nd of September through to the 8th of December on Thursday evenings from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. Yes, I know that's a big chunk of time on a Thursday evening. We break it up into a couple of different sections. We begin with sort of a founder roundtable, the opportunity to check in with what everybody's been doing each week, then break into clusters to have a bit more small group time, getting to know like a particular group of founders that you're allocated with. And then usually it's structured around two main content delivery sessions within that period. So usually from about 6 p.m. to 7 p.m., then there'll be a break, and then from about 7:30 to 8. So we'll have sort of 2 one-hour sessions. Some of those will be delivered by me. I suppose I probably should have talked a bit about my background. I can cover it very quickly. I've been working with startups for about 10 years, both here and in the UK, helping them get off the ground, getting early stage funding, figuring out some of this product market fit business, and figuring out their strategies to grow. But so yes, we'll do sort of 2 content sessions in the evening, and obviously there's mentoring all the way through the program and the opportunity to access some brilliant minds. And we tie everything up at the end with the Velocity Showcase, which is an opportunity for 10 of the participants to get up on stage and pitch their business, which is a fantastic opportunity that I'm sure Eva will talk about, to help refine your ideas and your messaging and your brand and your pitch down to 3 minutes of awesome. And obviously, once the program ends, you then within our MAP alumni community, and you have access to all of our membership and networking events that follow on from there. And it's a fantastic doorway into the ecosystem. Here's a quick example of some of the content that you'll see throughout the program. This is my work in progress at the moment, actually, for this upcoming cohort. So some of this may change. I'm sure that Eva could tell you as well about how some of these changed from the Ask Me Anythings last time through to what actually ended up getting delivered. But this is the general structure. So early on, we talk about things like the business model canvas and customer discovery, and things like the value proposition canvas, which are basically a set of very helpful tools to quickly put together an overview of where your business is at, who your customers are, what the problem you're solving is, and how you're making sure you're targeting that. So there's some fantastic sessions there where we get, actually for the systems mapping and value creation, we usually get in Adam Janke from UMPS Health, who was recently named one of Australia's top 100 innovators in the AFR list. Was it 1 or 2 weeks ago? So again, you're getting some very bright minds in there to help you figure out the early stages of your business. We'll cover off around minimum viable products and intellectual property, so how to build out something that you can test quickly just to show that the idea works. Talk about your beachhead market through the go-to-market strategy and sort of review where we're at in the middle. And then start to talk a bit more about the bigger strategic pieces. How do you take advantage of your human capital? How do you make sure that you build out good advisory boards and build good connections to find people to support you? How do you work with employees? How do you set a marketing strategy, and what is your pricing going to be? We'll look at different avenues for fundraising for early stage businesses, whether that's bootstrapping, angel investment, venture capital. I'm completely blanking on the word that I want. Oh my God. There's like non-equity funding as well available. I can't remember the term I want. I'm doing well today. And then near the end, we'll do things around pitching and storytelling. So consolidating that into, how do you put that together into a nice coherent story that you can communicate clearly to people. And then look at a reflection on the 10 weeks, where you're at and what the next step for your business are. Then there's, of course, the showcase and a celebration afterwards for all of the founders to get together and just celebrate and enjoy the fact that they've made it through the program. Here's a rough timeline of where we're at. Applications are currently open. They will close on Wednesday, the 17th of August I should put it up there, it's going to be at 5 p.m. That's an online application, relatively straightforward. There's a bit more detail about that later, so I'll cover that in a moment. And if you're successful through that first stage, we move on to interviews, which will be across the 29th, 30th, and 31st of August. That's a fairly simple and straightforward interview, 20 minutes with some of the MAP team just to go through your business, dig a bit deeper and get a bit more of an understanding of who you are and whether or not we can help you, because that's a really big part of what we look for in the application process, is whether or not a business is someone that we can help. The final cohort will be announced on the 2nd of September, when we take about 30 to 35 founders into the program. I note that I say founders there, not startups. And what I mean by that is that Velocity is actually run as a program that's focused on the founder. And the reason that we do that is because it's entirely possible that you'll come into the program and realize that the idea that you're working on is absolutely terrible and you need to get rid of it. And in that case, we don't want to be kicking you out because your startup's died. We want to be able to keep you as a founder in the program to help you work on the next idea or the one after that and build out the skills and knowledge you need to be able to find a better idea. So that's why I say founders. We accept up to 2 founders from any given startup. The reason that we do that is we don't want any, we've had requests in the past for 4 or 5 people to come through, and we actually don't want any one startup dominating the overall cohort. So we very specifically want to make sure that we're getting that diverse. And then The program, I should have taken out the word online when I was updating my slides from my Ask Me Anything earlier in the year for the first cohort, which was online. This program will be entirely in person. So that will be running on the Thursday evenings from the 22nd of September to the 8th of December here at Melbourne Connect, which is on the corner of Swanston and Grattan Streets near Melbourne University. It's a very exciting building, got a nice workshop delivery space. I'm looking forward to getting everybody in. So that's where everything will take place, which will be very exciting. In terms of the online application, it's 3 sections, pretty straightforward. The first section is questions about your startup and your eligibility. It's very, very straightforward stuff. The second section is about you as a founder and some information about your background, just because that helps us get an understanding of who you are and how we can help. And of course, a 3-minute video pitch. A video pitch can be slightly terrifying early on if you haven't done video pitches before. Don't worry about it. We don't expect it to be perfect at this stage. It's more just to try and convey it as best you can. It's not something where we're looking for you to be 100% perfect and polished, because frankly, if you were 100% perfect and polished, you wouldn't need velocity, so we'd say no to you. So I expect it to be a bit rough around the edges. Don't stress too much about it. That said, a successful application, and in particular a video pitch, will usually address a lot of these key points around the problem that you're trying to solve, what your solution is to that problem and why it's relevant. What is your target market? So who is it and how big is the market? Who is the team that you have working on this product or service or idea? Why is now the right time to be trying to solve this problem? Is there anything around the state of the world or the ecosystem that means this is a really good opportunity to tackle this problem? Traction is a question of what have you already achieved to date? And again, you don't necessarily need to have anything flashy or exciting to show there. You know, we'd much rather you be honest about where you're at, because that gives us a better understanding of, again, what we need to do to be able to help. Business model, pretty straightforward, is how you expect to be able to make money doing this particular thing. Doesn't need to be entirely commercial. If you're running a social enterprise, you'd still be looking for how that social enterprise is going to fund what it's doing, but it doesn't need to be looking to make outrageous amounts of profit. And then one of the other questions we have in there is, how can we help? What's the sort of support and advice and help that we can provide that you're really looking to get out of a program like Velocity? This is a quick overview of what's generally called sort of the standard 3-minute startup pitch. As it notes on the left, it's a suggestion and not prescriptive, but it's a really simple framework to be able to work through a startup pitch, put it together quite neatly and succinctly, and get through 3 minutes without worrying if you've waffled on for too long, as I'm sure that I have a tendency to do. But again, 5 seconds of introduction. Hi, I'm Rory. I run Map Velocity. What's the problem you're trying to solve? 15 to 30 seconds. Well, we're trying to make sure that founders can get into the startup ecosystem, etc. What's the solution? Well, we've built out a program where everyone can come in for 10 to 12 weeks, get a lot of the fundamentals and really understand the basics of how to build that business. Who's the market? Oh, there are so many people trying to get into the startup ecosystem. And we get to deal with founders coming from here and here and here. We've seen huge demand because we get over 120 applications for 10 spots in our core accelerator. So we know that that's there. The business model, I actually was meant to mention this earlier. We're very fortunate to be funded in part by LaunchVic, which is the state government funded agency responsible for growing the startup ecosystem here in Victoria. So our business model is actually technically that we lose money on Velocity, but that's okay because it helps grow the ecosystem, and that's something that we want to be doing here at the university. What's our traction? Well, we've got people like Eva who come back every time and say, I want to talk about the great experience that I had. So clearly we must be doing something right. Competition, let's not talk about that. I'll get myself in trouble. Who's the team? Me, Sarah, Abby, all the others here at the Melbourne Entrepreneurial Centre. It's fantastic. And what's next? Oh, look, we're going to keep growing and have a great time. That's all you really need in a pitch. It's a relatively straightforward, simple structure, covering off a lot of the foundational stuff. Now, of course, if you've got more hard numbers and more details in there, totally fine. But nothing to be worried about. In terms of preparing for the pitch, a couple of simple steps. Go and watch a whole lot of pitches. See what other people have done. So the best way to learn, because you'll get an understanding of how they fit some of those ideas together and the sequence that they put things in together. Once you've built out the idea for a pitch, practice it and obviously try to memorize it. and then take it out to people who have absolutely no idea what you're doing and say, hey, can I take 3 minutes of your time? I'm trying to pitch this. I just want to get an understanding of what makes sense, what's clear, what's not, and collect the feedback. Understanding, of course, that all of that feedback is just opinions. A lot of it is very valid, but it's not personal. You're looking for an understanding of how you're communicating what you're saying and making sure that you're getting your points across clearly, concisely, in a way that people understand. So that's the critical part of it. And also remember who your audience is. In this case, it's those of us selecting for the participants coming into the Velocity program. And a key part of that, as I will keep reiterating, I think, throughout this session, is that we're looking for how we can help you. Again, don't try and put on the gloss and sell us on why everything's sunshine and roses. We'd love for you to be open and honest about where you're at, the challenges that you're facing. And if you don't know something, that's totally okay. And I think that might actually even be on my next slide. There it is. So following on from that, if you're successful through the first stage of the online application and the pitch video, we'll invite you back for an interview. Strongly recommend that you come prepared. If you've got case studies where you've worked with customers, or you've got live examples of things that are tested out in the world, those are fantastic. We'll ask some questions around things like, what metrics are you measuring? In terms of your business, what's important for your growth? Are you interested in how many customers you have and how many times they come back to your business? Or is it more about how many views you get on a web page? So have a think about some of those. A lot of the time, we as the interviewers will lead the conversation. So we'll ask you about what we want to know about. A lot of the information that we're able to get through the application means that we don't need to ask you about everything because we've got a decent understanding through the application. At the same time, don't do what I do and keep talking forever and ever. Nice, quick, concise responses is the best way to get through a lot of really interesting information in a short amount of time. If you've got real traction, that's always a winner. So talk to us about your momentum. Where have you been? What's been happening? How are things changing and growing? What's your plan for the future? And of course, if you've got co-founders who are going to be coming through that interview process, practice with them. If you know that somebody's particularly an expert on a particular topic, then make sure you talk about who's going to answer what kinds of questions before you come into the interview. That'll be super helpful. If you're the business expert, don't start answering the technical questions. Let the technical person do it, and vice versa. And of course, keep it real. If you don't know, you don't know. It's perfectly okay to say that you don't know. Startups operate in an outrageously uncertain environment where you never really know. The only way you know is either you end up with a very successful business or you end up out of business. That's the only way to really know. So don't sugarcoat things. No need to. Just be open and transparent. And of course, relax and have fun. That's what it's all about. A couple of final bits of advice from me before we move along. Focus on building a good startup. I mean, yes, the application's important and we'd love to hear from you and we'd love to bring you through the program. But of course, don't stress about it so much that you neglect the business you're working on. And of course, being slightly contradictory, still make sure that application comes in. You can either submit it early or you can submit it on time. You cannot submit it late. And the only way to be in it is to put the application in. So we would love to hear from you all and give you the opportunity to be in the program. Next steps from here are, of course, you can book in some time with office hours for me. If you want to get a bit more detail about the program, I'm always happy to set aside a booking of sort of 20, 25 minutes. And we can discuss your situation in more depth and detail. The application form, I'm pretty sure that that's the right link. I suppose I could click on it and find out, but no, I'm reasonably confident that's the right link. I'm pretty sure I updated it today. And I think that's all that I have from me. So now
wonderful. Thank you so much, Rory. If I ever had any good ideas, I would definitely be applying for Velocity right now. But that's for everyone in the room. I'm sure that you've all got some fantastic ideas, given that you're all here. So I'm really excited to now be having a chat with Eva from Brave Feet. I know we're not allowed to have favourites, but we'll leave that one out. So Rory's done a fantastic job of explaining the Velocity program, but obviously hearing from somebody who has been through it, and you went through it in the first half of the year, I think gives everybody a different lived experience of what the program is like. Now, this is your show, not mine, so I'm going to put myself on mute and let you explain all about Brave Feet, your career, how you found Velocity, and then we'll get stuck into some questions after that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Sarah. And yeah, thanks, Rory. I have a dog as well, and she's snoring behind me. So if you hear random noises, it's not me, it's my dog. So yeah, I'm Eva. I'm the founder of Brave Feet. It's a kids shoe brand, saving the world 2 feet at a time, letting kids' feet be feet so they can develop into healthy and happy adults. Treading softly with shoes that were returned and upcycled, and giving back with a Step It Forward scheme. I should also say I have a bit of a croaky voice today as well, so if I need a sip of water, I'll take a pause here or there. So my background is I'm a physiotherapist, and yep, I've been a physio for quite a long time now, and just I'm a physio that works with feet, which isn't part of the norm. I guess I found my feet about 5 years ago, and haven't looked back. I have 2 kids, and wanted to make it right by them. I acknowledge that I'm not a perfect parent. I'd like to think I'm pretty good, but I'm not always going to get it right. But if I can help their feet do the right thing, then at least I have an argument when they're teenagers and demanding money for therapy. I can say, at least you got good feet. So that's sort of my background. And I was lucky enough to meet Amanda, who was in the previous cohort, and she's on YouTube having the same Q&A earlier in the year, and I was sort of chatting with her about where I might go. I had been dipping my toe in, so to speak, with this idea over COVID and sort of looking at different options, and I joined a few kind of networks, and that was where I met Amanda, and sort of wanting to really nut it out and kind of see whether it could grow feet and legs. And yeah, she said, oh look, this program's great. So I applied, and yeah, was very excited to get in. So it's been a fantastic 12-week program. Went really quickly. So yeah, definitely when you get in, make the most of every week, because I look back and think, oh, it just flew by. And yeah, I was lucky enough to be selected to pitch as well at the end, which was just the most amazing experience, and I loved it. And Rory was an amazing help in getting my pitch succinct for those 3 minutes, and yeah, was lucky enough to then apply and receive a grant from the Cameron Fellows Foundation, and that's helping to sort of move me forward in terms of getting a prototype and building brand awareness, and looking to then go through the sort of crowdfunding investment process. So that's kind of Brave Feet and me in a nutshell. Did you have any questions, Sarah?
We might add in Rory as well, to see if either of us have got any questions. I guess my main one for you, and this is what I'd be interested if I was applying, was what was the single best thing about being in Velocity?
Oh, there was probably a couple of really great things. I think you've just committed to 12 weeks. You've put your money where your feet are. Boom, boom. And you're as part of a cohort. So there's a group of you that are going through the same journey. Every week you show up, you learn something, you meet with your the cluster that you have, and you're sort of on a journey with everybody. So I think for me it was the accountability. I don't know about everyone else watching today, but you usually got a few balls up in the air, and just being able to have that dedicated time was valuable. And there was things that I'd learned previously just by reading or listening to podcasts, but actually having over that 12-week program, I could really relate it back to Brave Feet. And so yeah, it was just that accountability, the regular sessions. Yeah, it was good. And there was such a mix of people that presented. So I felt like I just learned a lot every week.
And what was the process of learning? Because you obviously participated in the Velocity Showcase as well, which we were very lucky to have in person for the first time in a little while at the end of last semester. So what was the process of learning to get ready to pitch in front of a big group of people like?
Oh, so I can't recommend highly enough to put your hand up to pitch. Obviously, I think there is a sort of a selection process, but just to have that opportunity, all of a sudden, I don't know if I can swear, but things got real. And when I was selected for that, to then go on to pitch, it was like, okay, now this is it. You know, all the learning that you've done has to be consolidated. So it actually sort of ramped it up a gear, and I had to go back over everything because I was sort of I've been learning, you know, each week and kind of applying a little bit, but then it was like, actually, you've got to present this now. So I was like, okay, quick, go back, re-listen to a few of the ones I might have kind of zoned out to a little bit, and then just kind of refine. And, you know, Rory, I can't thank you enough, because I think you were really key in helping me kind of get that to a place. Oh, actually, and Sarah as well. So both Sarah and Rory gave amazing feedback, and with the pitches and everything. So I was just felt like such an achievement at the end. So I was it's sort of up there with the things that I've achieved in my life. So it's super cool.
Oh, that's wonderful. We're always proud of everyone that pitches at any of our events. It can be a bit of a scary experience.
Yeah.
And we have had a question from Oscar, which is, at what stage of your startup did you join the Velocity program? This is a really good question, because there's probably going to be some people on the call that are all sort of at different points.
Yeah, so I'd say I was at really early stage. I'd had an idea for a while that had evolved a little. I had some initial branding, and I was sort of starting to build a bit of a message around what I was, the startup itself. I was pre-revenue, so I didn't have anybody who was put their names down for the shoe, and I actually didn't have the shoe. So that's pretty early. People are like, oh, have you got the shoe yet? No, just still kind of working on the idea. So very early stage, and it was kind of starting to kind of get to a place where I actually needed help to see how I could continue to make sense of it. So I didn't have the business model canvas hadn't quite been created properly. So it was kind of all of those little elements that I needed help with to refine. Yeah.
I'll just jump in for a second on that, because we actually try to get a good range of early stage businesses. Some will be, like you, in your case, Eva, very early stage where it's almost just an idea, but looking to understand, what's the pathway, where do I go, and how do I start building that idea and testing it to see if it's got legs and see if it can grow. We also take in quite a few who have already started to get out there and started building a product, and in some cases have early customers, but who are looking at it from the perspective of, we've managed to sort of get out there and start doing this, but haven't really built out the frameworks to be able to understand what's working and why. So in the one context, we have people who are sort of looking forward and saying, I know that this is the idea I want to pursue. I want to know that I can sort of build this runway in front of me to make sure that I know where I'm going. And others will be coming in saying, we've started running, but we're still not entirely sure where we're going or the direction we're facing. So let's, go through Velocity, put together a map of where we've been, what we've done, and what we need to do from here to help build out, again, some of that early stage planning for where they want to be going next, despite having already, in some cases, stumbled across success.
We've got actually a great question from Aditya, which is, how was your experience as a solo founder? And then we'll get into a couple of program specific questions for Rory.
That's a great question. It was great, because I felt like I wasn't a solo founder, because I was part of a group of other founders. And for the most part, on the program, on our cohort, I think there were a lot of solo founders on there as well. And look, the stats can certainly lend themselves to say that, having a co-founder is sort of the way for success. But I think having the right people around you is just as good. And so for me, it was just really helpful having other people that I could nut things out. And I guess the only thing about being a solo founder is that, you know, like, oh, I've just got this thing. Is it completely crazy that I'm thinking about, or is it actually got legs? And being able to have people that you can talk to honestly in a space where they could be like, yeah, I'm not sure if that's, or, oh, that's a really good idea. Have you thought about this? So I think just being able to kind of ask those questions that you might think are a bit random, but you can kind of share in your kind of cluster. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Now, Rory, we have had a couple of questions around whether the $500 fee is per founder or per team.
It is per founder because we are a founder-focused program. So there's the answer there.
Quick one, easy. And we did have a question from earlier on about whether or not there are any scholarships available for marginalised groups. So it might be a good time to speak about the way that the Cameron Foundation Fellowship works as well.
Yep. So if you're in a position where you're interested in applying and not sure that you can do the $500, then please reach out to me, have a chat. We'll see what we can do. But the other one that, as Eva mentioned, we have the fantastic support of the Cameron Foundation for the Velocity program, whereby one founder from each cohort of the program will be awarded a Cameron Foundation Fellowship, which is a grant of $5,000 and access to the Cameron Foundation's network of mentors and advisors for support to help grow your business from this very early stage into those next areas. So they're fantastic supporters of both MAP and the Velocity program and have been for a very long time. And we're very grateful for their support and for that opportunity that they're able to provide one of the founders that comes through each cohort.
Wonderful. And we also had a great question around if there are any examples of any types of businesses that we haven't been able to help and why. And I think a great starting point for that is the do no harm policy that we have at MAP, which is around not supporting businesses that are focused on gambling, alcohol, tobacco, weapons, all those sorts of nasty things.
Yes, and you've basically completely wrapped it up in one. Yes, that's also a university-wide policy. So we try not to support these things because we think that, you know, this sort of entrepreneurial activity should be focused on genuinely trying to make people's lives better and trying to solve problems rather than doing things that we know are harmful. So yes, that's one category where we don't think that we're able to help people. Look, the best way that I can put it otherwise is that there have been founders who have come through and said, hey, I'm interested in applying, you know, I'd love to do it. And have turned around and said, yeah, we're already like pulling in like a couple $100,000 of revenue and here's our plan to grow and scale. And basically we've turned around and said, well, what do you need us for? You know, you've already figured out a lot of those pieces around your product market fit and who your customers are and why they care. So you're not going to get as much value out of coming through the program. It's only really in cases where you know, we've had some come through who have actually had, you know, sometimes revenue in the tens of thousands of dollars, but again, still didn't really have that understanding of that or that framework of what they'd actually stumbled across. So we're very much trying to help people understand what is the problem that they're solving, who is the customer, and how have they made sure that their solution targets that. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that, you know, we won't help anyone who's doing too well on their own. You know, we love to try and bring people into the ecosystem and find ways that we can connect them through to people who can help them. So if people come through and are interested in Velocity and apply for Velocity and they're not quite the right fit for us, we're more than happy to try and direct you to where somebody who can help you is. Whether or not that's another accelerator program or to, you know, connect you with some of our mentors and others in the ecosystem who we think will be able to align more to where the stage that your business is at. But again, we're focused very much on that early stage. So if people are a bit too far down the road, not quite the right fit.
Sure thing. And Amar has asked, does the idea or startup have to be related to a product, or can it be for professional services or for consulting?
It can be for professional services or consulting. It's less common, just because obviously one of the key areas that makes a startup, I suppose, is that it's something that usually that can grow and scale fairly quickly. And in a lot of cases, the things that limits that scaling is human elements. So technology is a fantastic enabler because it allows things to grow and scale. That said, you know, of course, there are opportunities to implement technology through professional services, et cetera. which mean that, would be perfectly applicable and very welcome to come through Velocity. But if you have any questions, or if you're not sure, or if you think, oh, I think, if you're feeling like you're uncertain as to whether or not it applies, reach out to me, book in time in my office hours. Eva will be very familiar with me saying this, but my office hours are like, nobody gets to book free time in my calendar except through those office hours. And so they're open to you guys right now as part of the application process. And then throughout the entire program, I open my office hours to all the participants, and those participants, and at the moment, you as applicants, are the only people that get free reign to book into my calendar. My girlfriend has to ask me before booking time in my calendar. She'll be like, hey, do you want to go out for dinner? And I'll say, hang on, let me check my calendar. Whereas all of you at the moment, through that booking link, you can just book time in my calendar and I will be there.
Mr. Popularity.
So the reason I say that is because if you have any questions or any uncertainty, book in some time. I also say, and with no exaggeration, the best part of my job, the thing that I love most, is sitting down with founders in office hours and getting to hear about what they're doing, some of the challenges that they're facing, and trying to figure out what I can do to help. So feel free to book in that time. I hope you do. I look forward to it. So if you've got any questions or if there's any uncertainty, please do reach out to me. I'm so happy to try and answer the questions and to sit down and have a chat.
Excellent advice. Now, the link to the office hours is in the chat. We'll make sure we post it again so that you've all got access to that as well. Oscar's got a question for Eva. Is there something you would have done differently during the program?
So completely honest, I would have made more time available to digest what we learned on the Thursday afternoon, like Thursday evening. So that's one of the things that I'd also recommend. So make sure that you can, you've got that Thursday evening and then a couple of hours, 3-4 hours to just kind of go back over what you learned that week and kind of really keep on point to that. So then you can kind of really maximize what you learn. I think the face-to-face will be really helpful in terms of just engaging you more in that learning process. But I think that's the only thing I would do differently, is just make sure that I've got that time and just dedicate that time each week. And I did it most weeks, but there were some weeks that I missed, and actually then having to do the pitch, I went back and was like, reminding myself of it then. So I think it's just make sure you utilize the time, and 12 weeks goes so quickly. And that first week, connect with your cluster, reach out to all of the people in the group, make connections, catch up with them, utilize Rory every week, book in with him every week, and spend that time, because he's a great resource.
You're doing Rory's own PR for him, Eva.
I did such a good job, helping the pitch. So, as I say, it was awesome.
Oh golly, we've got a couple of questions from Dominic, and he's asked that my understanding was that this cohort was to be hybrid, both online and in person. But Rory, you've talked about the cohort being in person. Do you want to chat us through what the plan is with that?
Yes. Now, okay, look, yes, technically there will be the option to Zoom into the sessions. But that said, the primary plan for this cohort is to run it in person as the first preference. So this is not a case of, yes, it's hybrid, just feel free to Zoom in every single week and it'll be fine. It's more of a case of, we expect that if you can be there in person, you will be there in person. And if there's an exception, then you'd let me know and we can arrange to make sure that you're able to Zoom in and see the content. So the reason behind that is basically everything that Eva has just been saying about the value of an in-person connection. There are so many things that you will learn from the other founders who are in the room in person, and so many of those serendipitous little connections that it drives me nuts trying to do it online. The amount of extra effort that has to be done to sort of forcibly create those environments for those little conversations to happen, and force people into breakout rooms and mix them up every time to make sure that everybody's spoken to the right person. But it can be done online, but I think there's real value in being there in person, because you never know what conversation you're going to overhear the group at the next table having, where you can say, oh, actually, I can help with that. I know somebody who's been working in this area for 10 years. And those sorts of connections are utterly invaluable. You cannot put a price on how important they are. And so, yes, technically there will be the option to be hybrid and be zooming into the sessions. We want to make sure that it's still accessible, but at the same time, oh boy, do I strongly encourage you to be there in person. You will get, probably an order of magnitude more out of the program being there in person.
For sure. Eva, did you find when you got to actually meet up with your cohort in person that it was more valuable?
Yeah, so much more valuable. And look, I'm so grateful that Zoom exists and that things have just expecting a little person to wander in then, sorry, that Zoom exists and we get to kind of, it is accessible, but just having that face-to-face time just was so much better. And like, I don't know here, you're on Zoom, but you've got something open and you're answering an email and little things are happening. It can be quite distracting. If you're also working, in a business separate to the startup, and actually going in and being there and being present in it, I think that face-to-face was so invaluable and just learned so much more. And the actual the location where it's going to be is very fancy, so it's a nice spot to rock up to, in the for the face-to-face. And I'm actually down in the peninsula, so it was a bit of a trek, but was so worth it, and actually not as hard as I thought it was going to be just to rock up. So yeah, highly recommend.
Great. Rodrigo's asked about the Velocity Showcase, and will the final pitch be in front of an audience at the end of the program? So Rory, do you maybe want to touch a little bit on what happens with the showcase? We have had another question around selection criteria for the 10 teams that get to present as well.
Yep. So yes, so 10 of the teams will be selected to be able to pitch at the showcase. There is a sort of application process for that, where basically throughout the cohort, I'll inform people, of course, that it's coming up and give them the opportunity to say, yes, I'd be interested in being considered. And then I will sit down and have a chat with people, get to understand, where they're at, what they're looking for. And a big part of actually the driving selection around the showcase is who will benefit the most. It's not, I think I had to reiterate the point a couple of times through the previous cohort that this was certainly by no means a top 10. This is not, these are the top 10, these are the best out of the group. It's not that at all. It's more of a case of, in some cases, Eva, I'm gonna disclose something here, but
I was a top 10.
but part of the reason that I selected you to be pitching at the showcase is because I knew that it would consolidate all the things that you've been doing.
Yeah.
I knew that it would force you to, sort of get a bit more real about it, because if we're, and moving on to the second part of the question, because yes, it's in front of an audience. I think it's about 220 people here in the forum at Melbourne Connect, and that is a really fantastic mix of people from the MAP community, other startup founders, mentors, advisors, industry experts, investors as well often come along there to try and get an understanding of some of these early stage businesses and where they're at and how they're upcoming, etc. So it's a room full of fantastic people to connect with, and it's a really great opportunity to get up there in front of those people and pitch on that stage. Now, I'll also make clear that doesn't mean that the others miss out on everything. This is not like you pitch or you miss out and you're a second class participant. That's not the case at all. There were a couple of participants in the previous program who, I would argue probably had a much more advanced startup than someone like Eva. And actually, the reason that I didn't include them in the showcase is because they wouldn't really have gotten anything out of it. Because they already knew what their branding was, they already knew what their messaging was, they were already at the point where they'd been able to start connecting with some of the right people in the ecosystem and connecting with investors to be able to start talking about fundraising. And so getting up on that stage and pitching would have been telling people something everybody already kind of knew. So very much in line with the overall structure of the program, a big part of that selection for the showcase is who will benefit the most, who can get the most out of this, in some cases for the growth of their business, and in other cases for growth of them as a person. So it depends a lot on who's interested in the cohort in pitching, but it's a fantastic opportunity. And if you're in the cohort, I would strongly encourage you to put your hand up for the opportunity to pitch at the showcase.
Absolutely. Now, does anyone have any more questions for Rory or Eva before we wrap up tonight? If you've got anything burning that you'd like to ask, now's your opportunity. Otherwise, we'll thank everybody for participating. Eva, thanks so much for popping on
Thanks for having
tonight.
me.
We really, really appreciate it.
Yep. And good luck to everyone. It's well worth it.
Absolutely. And thanks so much, Rory, for your wonderful explanation of the program and taking us through in detail what it's all about and how to apply. So with that, a big thank you from the MAP and the Melbourne Entrepreneurial Centre teams for joining us tonight. I am going to be in touch with you all to share the slides, which I know a few of you have asked for, and also, again, office hours. Can't recommend making sure that you book in those office hours. You know that Rory's girlfriend's going to be doing the same thing. Also, make sure that you have subscribed to our newsletter and that you're following us on our social media accounts to get application updates, find out about events and all the fun stuff that we get up to at MAP. Thanks again, everybody. Have a lovely evening. We'll see you around.
Thank you, everyone. Good luck on your applications. And remember, the pitches don't have to be perfect.